Hello, my name is Patrick Schmidt, and I am a tenor trombone player. I am currently finishing my third year of undergraduate studies as a music performance and music education major here at TAMUK. One day, towards the end of my final year in elementary school, when I was a fifth grader, all students were required to go to the gym for a presentation by the head band director and several of his students from the neighboring middle school. In this presentation, the students demonstrated several of their instruments and what they sound like and what they're capable of doing, and it just really caught the attention of every single student in the gym. We were all in shock and awe over all of these musical instruments that we were completely unfamiliar with. And it was honestly a very enjoyable experience, and at the end of it, a paper was handed out to all of the students, and we chose what instruments we liked out of all of them. And so there was kind of this common trend for fifth graders where we would pick kind of the brightest, highest, cool sounding instruments, and that did not include the trombone, unfortunately. It actually meant it was very limited in the choices that we chose, which were trumpet, saxophone, and percussion. And I was no different in this. So when we submitted those back in, the band directors kept it for their records for if we decided to go into band in sixth grade. So from there, I was now a sixth grader, and I joined the band. And our first day was trying out instruments based on what we had submitted while we were in fifth grade. When it was my turn to go up, the band director studied my face, kind of the structure of my teeth, whether or not I had braces, things like that. And he looked at me and he said, "You look like a trombone player." And I was completely just astonished because it was one of the instruments that I had not chosen, and it was also an instrument I wasn't very familiar with. So when I tried out the trombone, I produced a sound. I don't want to talk about what kind of sound I produced on it, but I was able to produce a sound, and I was able to move the slide back and forth. And so the director said I will be playing trombone. And you know, to this day, it's been about 10 years since the trombone was chosen for me, and I've stuck to it ever since. And to this day, I consider it just one of the greatest instruments and life-changing experiences that I've ever gone through. A typical day for the music major is quite a busy one. There's never really a dull moment. You should always keep yourself busy, in the opinion of many people. So when it comes to me specifically, I wake up at 7 o'clock and go through my morning routine. I go ahead and take a shower to wake myself up. I brush my teeth. I try to grab something to eat. I might, get on my laptop and just kind of cycle through some social media or go through my emails just to make sure that I'm up to date on anything that might have been announced. And then I go ahead and go to my 8 o'clock class, which is my political science class on Mondays. Right after that, I go ahead and go to the music building, where I work at the music building theory lab as a theory tutor. And I go ahead and stay there from 9 to 12, assisting students in ear training, music theory, Form A, orchestration, and stuff like that. So it's a really rewarding job to be able to work with your colleagues and try to get people to understand things and get different perspectives on people's learning, which ties heavily with the whole music education side that I'm going through. So from 12 to 1, it's a really good time for me to sit down at my apartment, grab a quick bite to eat, maybe watch like a YouTube video or see what's going on online, maybe go through a couple articles, and of course go through any emails and any messages and try to see if I can pretty much stay up to date on what's going on. During this time, there's a couple students that usually come in to help, that want some help in composition, and I'm always there to help. I go to my Analytical Techniques 2 class, which is another fancy term for Form and Analysis 2, where we study a lot of the recent music that's come out. After that, I return back to the music theory lab and go ahead and help a couple people. Usually it's around this time I go ahead and help people with Theory 1 and stuff like that. I go to the music annex for wind symphony rehearsal. During this time, it's very much just playing through the music and rehearsing, and it's really fun stuff. And the most fun I've ever had in this setting is when we played through our bigger pieces, which include West Side Story. West Side Story is the most recent piece that we put together, and the thrill of playing the trombone part in that is just, it was insane. It was a little hard to put together, but you know, after many sectionals and rehearsals and the limited time frame that we had, everything felt a little rushed, but it was certainly a wonderful performance, and it was a joy to be a part of. I go to my education night class. During this time, we cover classroom management techniques in a very student-led discussion format. In each of these classes, we get into groups and we discuss classroom management techniques by giving presentations to the class, and there's a lot of student-led conversations, and it really sparks a lot of interest in seeing how other potential teachers go about teaching. And I go ahead and go back to my apartment and I get some dinner because it has been a long day. During this time, I like to relax, once again watch a couple YouTube videos if I can, and really just sit down and do homework. Usually at this level right now, I typically do a lot of research for my assignments, and there's a lot of papers that need to be submitted, of course. But I always like to find some sort of time to just relax, and this is really the time to just unwind for a bit, enjoy some good food, and just overall retain my sanity. Many music departments across the US really emphasize the importance of networking with professional musicians and band directors locally and on the national level. And the TAMUK Music Department is no different. In fact, it is extremely helpful in its process of really getting the students to go out and make a name for themselves. The TAMUK Music Department puts on several concerts in all ensemble settings every semester. This extends to the choir, the orchestra, the concert bands, the wind symphony, individual studios, and other ensembles that might be student-led. There's quite a bit of performances throughout the week, and that doesn't even include the performances for junior recitals, jazz combos, and senior recitals that go on throughout the year. Under the direction of Dr. Oscar Diaz, the TAMUK Trombone Choir is played at several venues across the state, on the national level and on the international level. On the state level, we have performed at TMEA, which is the Texas Music Educators Association conference held every year in San Antonio. We've gone on several tours across the state, most recently going to more of the central areas of Texas. We've performed at places like the Big 12 Conference in Lubbock, Texas, and we've always made a focus and a goal of ours to go out and perform at very large festivals. And most recently, the TAMUK Trombone Choir has traveled to Spain and performed at the International Trombone Festival. Many of the experiences I've made in the TAMUK Trombone Choir has been not necessarily been at these venues. In fact, most of the memories that I've made while being an undergraduate student here has been led by the relationships that I have with a lot of my colleagues. A lot of these people I actually call more of my family rather than just the individual members of the trombone choir. I've made quite a bit of friendships here, and the memories that have come out of this are gonna last a lifetime. There's a lot of people here that I care deeply about that, you know, at the end of the day, these are not just friends, but these are people that I will know for a lifetime, and that I will be, you know, grateful to continue working with them in the future as either, you know, I don't know, competitive band directors, or getting together every once in a while and forming some sort of ensemble and performing or something like that. There's a lot of things to get out of the TAMUK Trombone Studio, and one of them for sure is family. I've very much been infatuated with a lot of research in music theory, in child brain development, and how music really affects people. what are my aspirations for the future? I'll tell you this. I'd like to keep a really well balanced schedule of being able to be with my family, being able to perform, being able to teach, being able to do research, being able to compose, and everything else in between. I'd like to make a name for myself one day, and I'd like to do everything I can in music to really push the boundaries that we call just music. Dr. Diaz has impacted my life in many ways. I owe him a huge debt. I owe him a lot of thanks. When I was in high school, my senior year, I was very determined to go into music, and I wasn't too comfortable with the options that I was having to deal with. My family wasn't very much for me going into music, and in addition to that, the only school that I was really gearing towards was out of state. I wanted to be as far away from where I had been my whole life. I wanted to be away from it all. I wanted to stick to just music for the rest of my life, thinking that I was prepared to make a lot of adult decisions on my own. When I met Dr. Diaz, it was the latter half of my senior year, and I had never heard of Dr. Diaz before. The only thing I really knew about him was that he worked out a lot, he barbecued, and he played trombone very, very well. Thankfully, I had the opportunity to meet him through my band director. Dr. Diaz came over to my high school and he gave me a lesson, and it was very interesting to get a different perspective that I've never really gotten before on my playing. And it was really his feedback that kind of told me, like, maybe he would be a great teacher to study under. So we got in contact. I let him know that I was planning on auditioning at TAMUK, and he helped me throughout my final semester of high school figure out what exactly I wanted to do in music, which was very much, I didn't know, but I knew I wanted to be in music to make some sort of impact. So when I arrived at TAMUK, I had a lot of questions. I wasn't very familiar with many of the people around here. I was very much occupied with what I wanted to do in music. Thankfully for me, he was able to really get me out of my bubble. He was able to teach me that in order to go somewhere, I needed to make a lot of companions on the way. So I opened myself up to the studio, I made some friends, and throughout my years here, he's really served as a mentor. Anytime I need feedback on something, anytime I need answers to something, he's the guy I go to. He's extremely knowledgeable and he's devoted to this studio. So much so that we've just become a huge family at this point. And Dr. Diaz has really impacted my life because he's almost acted as the person that's kind of geared me towards what I want to do for the rest of my life. He's acted as the model of what I would like to become. So that's how Dr. Diaz impacted my life. If you are currently a musician watching this video, know that you always need to seek opportunities, and many opportunities lie where you least expect them. So to my friends, to my colleagues, to anyone that might be watching this video, consider yourself and what you're doing in music. And if you find that you haven't really reached where you want to be, evaluate where you are and figure out where you'd like to end up. Like I said earlier, I currently don't know where I'm going to end up. I know where I want to go. I know what exactly I would like to do. And there's quite a bit of middle ground to get there. But there's not a lot of things I know about going through all that middle ground. So seeking opportunity and finding the resources, consulting a lot of professionals is the best thing to do. And just keep looking. And if you ever feel like music is putting you down and there's ever a moment where you reach those points, because it does happen to a lot of us, where we reach the point, maybe in the semester, maybe it's in the year, there's always a point where we kind of just hit this spot where we don't really know where we're going and we don't know what we're doing anymore. And to those of you who might be going through those slumps in music, just focus on what got you in the music in the first place. There's a lot of things in music that kind of reward what you're, that leave a lot of rewards that we might not see as, you know, professional musicians performing and stuff like that. Know that there's always an audience. There's always somebody listening to what you're doing as a musician, and that whatever you do could have a profound impact on their life. I think it's fair to say that many of us have had that point where, because we listened to someone, because we've heard someone and their perspective, or maybe whatever they were doing, we were able to find some sort of meaning to it. So to those of you who might have found yourself in a slump or don't know what you're doing right now, just look around, and there's always something to find in music to get you back in there. You can add that to your video or not. It's very much a personal statement, because I notice there's always a lot of people that go through a lot of stuff in music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Patrick.
Yep. I feel like that was such a depressing part of the video.